alumni panel event that we're hosting this evening. My name is Kelly Jensen, and I oversee career services for HDSI. And you may or may not know, we do alumni presentations each quarter. We usually have an alumni spotlight that we feature who talk about their journey, their challenges, their successes. They give great insights, and there's always a lot to learn from. And this event I'm super excited for because we don't just have one alum, we have three. And so they've got some different perspectives to offer you. And I hope that you really enjoy. We're going to go through a list of questions, and whatever time we have remaining toward the end of the hour, it'll be open for Q&A. So you can put your questions in the chat if you like, or you can hold them to the end. Either way is fine. But we'll go ahead and get started by turning it over to our panelists this evening with the first question. If each of you could briefly introduce yourselves to the audience, including one thing you miss most about your time at UCSD.
I can go first. Hey guys, nice to see all the faces here. My name's Atharva. I graduated from UCSD HDSI with a bachelor's in data science in 2024. And I'm currently an AI solutions consultant at Connor Group. They specialize in finance and technology, where I work on various AI and data science and data engineering projects. One thing I miss most about UCSD is the campus. I mean, construction going on all the time, and just living on campus and having all your friends pretty much a walk away is something you don't appreciate it until it's gone.
Hello, everyone. My name is Will Earley. I graduated in 2024 with a master's in data science. I'm a senior data analyst at a nonprofit called Homebase that's based in San Francisco, and it's a nonprofit devoted to ending homelessness in the US. And so I use data science, data analytics techniques to help communities address their homelessness response. A lot of stuff I miss about UCSD. Kelly, I miss you. You're a very helpful person. So having somebody just always like job hunting for you is honestly awesome. I miss my classmates and learning from other people who are kind of like focused on the same things. And then I'm a big Triton sports fan, so I miss going to basketball games and other sporting events. Yeah.
I'm Advitya. Great to see everyone here. I graduated from HDSI in 2021 with an undergrad in data science. At that time, I think the undergrad program was the only program that was available in the data science department. Since then, I have been working at Microsoft as a ML engineer. I have gotten to work in a variety of orgs inside the company. So initially started working on a variety of like research projects and like different kinds of ML projects. Then I transitioned to working on responsible AI tooling, especially for vision models. Transitioned to working on evaluation tooling, especially Azure OpenAI evaluations for large language models. And most recently, we're customizing LLMs to fix merge conflicts in code in essentially the largest Git repo on the planet. So that's been very interesting as well. And yeah, just having a lot of fun there. Probably the one thing I really miss about campus is I think the diversity of events that I'd get to go to, like all from career fairs to math class to Model UN club that we had there to like working with a college-run startup and doing some research. Um, there was always something to look forward to, whether it's like solving programming assignments or even like writing like handwriting solutions to math or code on a piece of paper. The campus would always feel very stimulating to me. So I just sort of really liked the diversity of different kinds of things that I would sort of do and look forward to.
Well, thank you for adding to that diversity for our current students. And thank you all for being here, Will, Atharva, and Advitya. We're doing this virtually because they're all coming from different areas. I believe, Advitya, you're up in Seattle, and Will, Puerto Rico, and Atharva, you're local, right? San Diego?
Yep. Yeah, back in San Diego, that's correct.
Yeah. So we're across a couple time zones and different cities, but thank you all for making the time to do this. It's really nice for students to hear from alumni. So thank you for coming, and thank you for all the participants as well. Okay, my first question to you is, what was your first professional experience after graduation, and how did you land it?
This is interesting because I was actually interning at a company called Proofpoint. They do cybersecurity for email for enterprises. So I'd been interning them for a year before graduation. It's kind of a full year type thing. And then I continued that internship after graduation because I was gonna get a return offer and go back to them as an MLOps engineer. Long story short, the job got moved overseas at the very last minute. So I was kind of stuck scrambling to find other jobs. But I eventually landed in consulting. And consulting is, pretty connection heavy. I'd say even more so than the general technology domain type jobs. And the how I got introduced to Connor Group, and I didn't even know what Connor Group was before I started working there, was at my younger brother's soccer game. I met the CTO. So then we started talking, and then I started to go through all the interview process. So I I don't want to like understate how important connections are and networking is, but it is very important. I know people tell students that all the time, and you're probably fed up with networking and meeting people, but you never know, the next person you meet is, probably could open up many doors for you to find a job. So always be networking.
So the first professional experience that I had after graduating from HDSI was being part of the Microsoft AI Development Acceleration Program, or MADAP. It's a 2-year rotation program where I got to work with 4 different orgs across the company for 6 months each on different kinds of ML projects. And in terms of how I landed that opportunity, now, at least like since back in college to even now, I've always been a big advocate of getting referrals over just applying online for positions, because that really improves your odds of sort of landing that interview, especially when you have someone on the inside who's kind of rooting for you or who's kind of advocating for you to be interviewed for a particular position. However, in this case, something really interesting happened. So, for context, I was working with this professor at HDSI on ML systems research, and I was a part of their research lab for the last 2.5 years of my time in college. And so that professor had really strong like academic and industry ties as well. So when I was looking for my full-time job, I basically just like sent like a LinkedIn message to a head of a research lab at Microsoft that the professor that I worked with at HDSI had really close sort of industry ties to. They had collaborated on a bunch of papers together and such. So I just introduced myself saying that, hey, I've been working under this professor and y'all have been collaborating together. I'm interested in like positions with Microsoft. I linked that rotation program that I just talked about. And I just asked them for a referral, just like a plain old referral, like every other position that I would apply to. However, as I guess turns out, that research lab was also collaborating with this rotational program in terms of sort of working together very directly. So because they were working together with that program that I wanted to apply to, the person that I reached out to, who was the head of that lab, kind of went a step further. Not only did he give me a referral, he personally sort of took my resume that I emailed him and he like sent it over a Teams message to who would end up being my first manager when I had joined Microsoft. And so that's sort of a reference where that person basically sent my resume to the hiring manager, just saying, "Hey, take a look at this resume. This might be promising or whatever," was even more powerful than a typical referral, especially when you had someone who was directly working with the team that you wanted to apply to, and sort of essentially asking that hiring manager that, "Hey, like let's actually interview them." And that's how I was able to enter the interviewing process. And so the takeaway that I got from that was after I joined that program, I got to know that out of the less than 20 people in that program, everyone except 2 people all had master's and PhD degrees. They were all master's and PhD graduates. There were only 2 people in the entire program, including myself, who did not have a master's or a PhD. And so that really made me realize that with this connection I was able to leverage with the professor at HDSI that I worked with, their kinds of connections were able to unlock sort of these MS, PhD kind of roles, even without even like at the undergraduate level. So yeah, network sort of became really key towards that.
That's awesome. You love to hear that. That's the power of the professors and the connections of UCSD. So that's really sweet. That's a great story. For me, but the whole time I was doing my master's, I was working at a local. I was living in San Diego and working at a local nonprofit called PATH, People Assisting the Homeless, as a data analyst, kind of like somewhat of an entry level role. Really, I just needed a job. That's why I was working there. But I found like a total passion. This is like my thing now. I love, trying to use data to solve homelessness. And so once I graduated, then probably like a month, 2 months later, I just applied to some like higher level roles, kind of doing similar stuff to what I was already doing. And because I had the master's, I was able to get one of those. And now, like I said, we're based in San Francisco, but I work remote, which is awesome. If you can swing it and it works for you. So yeah, I live in Puerto Rico now, which is pretty sweet.
How did you end up with that role, Will? Did you know somebody or?
Yeah, great question. No, I didn't know anybody. When in doubt, just like Google exactly what you want. And I Googled homelessness data science job, I think. And it was just like the first one. And the real, I mean, I applied to, it was like 390 jobs or something. And the reality is, to some extent, just like a numbers game. And when you're the right fit and like the right person is like looking at the HR platform at the right time or something, but you just got to get your application in there. So yeah, I didn't know anybody, but now I do. Now I'm in.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Advitya and Atharva, for also emphasizing the importance of networking, because I know students probably do get tired of me saying that over and over, but I can't emphasize it enough. So thank you for backing me up on that. Next question for you all. Which courses, skills, or experiences best prepared you for a path in industry?
Honestly, I think experiences outside the classroom matter as much as, school and classes do. I had a very great opportunity to lead DS3, and for anyone listening who's not familiar with that club, you guys should check it out. They do a lot of cool events. So one of the very cool data science orgs on campus. But yeah, leading that org, managing our executive board taught me how to operate in ambiguity, because that's something you're not necessarily given all the time, right? You can be in DC80, they'll give you a notebook with all the questions you need to solve, and it'll all be kind of pre-filled. Then you're like, okay, I know exactly what I need to do. When you start an internship, when you're in leadership positions, no one is telling you what to do. For example, in my very first internship in my first year, I didn't know what to do. My manager was also a new PhD grad, so he didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. We were both figuring out what to do because we didn't know the problem we were trying to solve was all new. No one was giving me pre-filled Jupyter notebooks to write code in, and we had to spend just almost half of our time figuring out what exactly do we need to solve, right? That in and of itself sometimes is kind of half the journey, like sitting down, understanding, okay, what is it that we need to do? And then you can go ahead and do it. But yeah, in general, I think trying to get as much of, club experience, leadership experience, obviously internships, because internships mimic industry, those will all eventually help you out in your full-time job for sure.
Yeah, so in terms of like sort of what best prepared me for industry, so I will sort of preface this by saying that no 4-year college program or 2-year college program on this planet can really prepare us for 40 years of the industry, especially not in an industry like ours, or like data science or AI. This is an industry which does not respect tradition. Like it does not respect how things are traditionally done. And things have been changing faster than ever. But still, in terms of, let's say, what were some of the things that I felt sort of more closely prepared me? Of course, was like internships and practical experiences. because that is how you sort of transition from a mindset of just learning information to actually taking information and applying it in some way, which might be more open-ended or where the answers may not be very clear. I really want to plus one Atharva's point when he mentioned about ambiguity. When you're kind of given a novel problem that you have to solve, and there's not like one right answer for it. Developing that muscle of trying to come up with different ideas and collaborating with a bunch of people and kind of using your soft skills to kind of like understand how they're approaching the problem and how all of you can sort of collaborate together in groups and such are some really valuable skills, even soft skills, which you sort of get when you are in, let's say, an environment of sort of learning and collaborating together. Classes also offer this to a good extent in terms of final projects and such. But in a way, let's say doing internships or working with startups or doing research are kind of one of the sort of the most like direct or sort of the most closely mimicked ways of trying to simulate an environment like that. And in terms of like, aside from even internships, some of the classes that I found really beneficial. Oh, so in fact, even before that, in terms of even internships, one benefit that I found of, let's say, working with a startup or doing all these going through all these practical opportunities was I was able to learn data science concepts before they were even being taught in classes. Let's say in my freshman year or my sophomore year, if I'm learning like how to use NumPy or how to use pandas for your data manipulation, I would get to know that like at least back in my time, because I was the second ever cohort for HDSI, we were being taught these frameworks to their like fullest extent end of our sophomore year or beginning of our junior year kind of thing. So by the time those concepts were introduced in my classes, I kind of already knew those. And by that time, I was kind of already ready to sort of apply those concepts or even talk about them in an interviewing setting in terms of timing when to get internships and such. So also because of that reason, practical experiences really helped. And some of the top classes that I feel that helped me was, I think DSE 102 was very, very helpful in terms of dealing with data at a large scale and sort of developing some foundations over like cluster computing frameworks and cloud computing and things like that. And then, of course, there are some math classes which really helped my intuition. And I believe like, yeah, other ML classes are also like, they also continue to be very helpful. But yeah, DSE 102. And then depending on your domain, whether it's data engineering or something else, a couple of those operative courses can be especially helpful to sort of start developing that muscle or that mental model in your head.
I think any opportunity you can get to work with other people is probably for the best. That's something that those are the skills that I find most valuable in my work. Like I can create the best model, the most accurate model, but if I can't like explain it to the people who didn't create it, it's really not that valuable. And so I spent some time working in the athletics department with the basketball team doing like data science, data analytics, I should say. And I'd have to kind of like explain it to the coaches and stuff, like what I'm seeing and why it's important. So that was really valuable experience. And then also we did a capstone in the masters, like kind of at the very end, where you team up with like 2 or 3 other classmates and you work together on a project. And that's like a really valuable experience as well, because that's in my experience how the real world kind of works. You're typically not doing something on your own. You need to collaborate. You need to work with other people. You need to like listen to their ideas, even when you think yours is better. Learn how to like create the best product together. And so in my role, I'm frequently on a team with non-technical colleagues, and so I need to like be able to explain what ridge regression is to them, and kind of like generally how it works and why it makes sense what I'm presenting to our clients and stuff. So any opportunity you can get to work with other people, I think is invaluable experience.
Absolutely. I appreciate the emphasis on the communication and teamwork because those are skills that are invaluable almost anywhere you go. So thank you for sharing those experiences. What challenges did each of you face when searching either for internships as a student or as a new graduate seeking work? What was the most difficult about those times?
I'm sure all of you guys here on the call are, either looking for internships or full-time jobs. So super relevant. Thank you, Kelly. To be honest, it's genuinely hard out there. With AI, a lot of entry-level jobs are being cut. I'm honestly not sure what the internship market looks like because it's been many years since I've tried to look for an internship. But it's tough. You can only just keep trying and hope that something works out. For me personally, finding a job was harder than finding an internship because of the example I gave earlier. I was gonna go back to Proofpoint as I'm a full-time employee after interning there for almost 1.5 years, but due to pre-IPO cost cutting and things like that, they moved a lot of the roles that they were hiring for new jobs for overseas. So just kind of being in that position where you're expecting to be in a position and then that position being kind of dragged out from underneath you is kind of sobering. And I definitely recommend for anyone who's interning in a third year role and expecting a return offer to come in after graduation to still look out for full-time roles, because there's just stuff that is sometimes not always in your hands. Stuff can change. You might always also find a better role, which you can use to negotiate and things like that. So yeah, it's definitely challenging. Each person will kind of face their own challenges based on their situation, their strengths. If you're super good at technical interviews, but you're not very good at behavioral stuff, you might have a harder time explaining your technical stuff to a hiring manager, and vice versa. You may be amazing at acing those behavioral questions, but you might kind of crunch under pressure of doing the technical questions live, and that's something you might want to focus on. So always just see where you as a person specifically are deficient in, and try to make that better.
Yeah, thanks for sharing it there. I guess my answer. So from what I have understood, let's say interacting with, let's say, a whole bunch of like my college friends, even after graduation and such, my answer might be different from most people out there in terms of the challenges that I faced. So for most people, the challenge that they had, the overarching challenge that they had sort of faced was, okay, how do you land that interview? How do you land that opportunity to actually talk to the hiring manager and the recruiters and others and sort of get onto the process? In all honesty, that was never a problem for me because starting from freshman year onwards, and this is something that I really wanted to drive was I always really tried to emphasize on personal branding and kind of really making sure that my resume and LinkedIn and all of that was like very well updated with impact metrics on what I sort of did and sort of advertising, let's say, whatever I would do, let's say, whether it's on social media or through HDSI newsletters and stuff at the time. And so, in that sense, landing an interview was not a problem for me. Passing an interview was a big challenge for me. And the reason behind that was, at least back in college, and I feel like I'm still kind of trying to work on this. Um, I had a habit of especially talking really fast or in like a really fast pace. So in a way, my articulation was kind of all over the place back in college, where even if I sort of knew answers to questions and such, it was very easy for me to just talk in a really fast pace, try to cover as much ground as I could, and possibly even kind of like go astray instead of really pausing and allowing the interviewer to absorb what I just said and really allowing for a conversation to happen or for them to drive the conversation because they're evaluating me in that setting. And so that sort of took like a really long period of time for me to sort of like improve my articulation, try to, let's say, do a bunch of mock interviews with friends, have them sort of give some really honest feedback, even going so far as like listening to like a recording of myself. I know it's very painful for people to typically do that, but after a point, like desperate times, desperate measures. So yeah, passing the interview personally for me was like a really big challenge. The other big challenge was kind of the fact that I was on a student visa because I was an international student from India. And so that kind of added another layer of interesting complexity where sometimes like a lot of companies might not let's say take people like I who would be on, let's say, student visas. Even after my internship, after my junior year of college, I was supposed to get two offers within that company to choose from. And I ended up getting neither of those offers because they were not able to sponsor me, sort of thing. And so that sort of made me go back to square one, back to like job search from scratch, and then sort of took me 9 months of also fixing my articulation and my performance in those interviews to then sort of finally land a few offers. So yeah, so passing the interview and I guess circumstances were some of the challenges in my specific case.
For me, it was a grind. I was in the application phase for a while. Luckily, I had this other job that was like working well enough, but I really wanted to like move forward in my career. And I kind of decided that I wanted to be very passion driven in my role in these jobs that I was applying for. I wanted to work in social services or education. And so in some ways that helped. In some ways it made it challenging because then I could kind of like specialize in those areas, but at the same time it like limited the scope of just the number of applications I could complete. So yeah, I applied to like so many roles. I for a period like many months my goal was 3 applications every day and I would like just do that, just pop, just grind. And it's challenging. I mean, it can really push it to your limit, but eventually it all works out. And I did just like we've heard from my fellow presenters, did some mocks with my friends and like really tried to do some reality checks with friends and family and have them help you out as much as they can. And eventually got the role after a lot of time and a lot of applications. A lot of Workday. Workday is the worst platform to apply on. Let me just
Agreed.
no shade, but it's just you gotta like create a product. I don't want to create a profile. Okay, I don't need to rant about that right now.
That's why you need to use Simplify, guys. Get that extension.
There it is.
Simplify saved me so many Workday hours. Oh my goodness.
Thank you for that tip. I've heard that from other students as well. I'm going to have to look into that. But
yeah, definitely do.
Thank you all for sharing those challenges. I know it's probably really helpful for current students to hear that because the job market is very challenging right now. And to know that, everybody goes through it in different ways and have different challenges. You're not alone, that's for sure. And so thanks for providing those situations but also the takeaways of what you did to kind of get through it that might be helpful for other students as well. Can you please tell us what you each love most about your current jobs and whether that is in regard to the specific role you have or the company you're with or a little bit of both? We would love to know more about that.
Sure. So I'm in consulting, right? To be honest, consulting was completely new to me after graduation. I never had any consulting internships or I never did any consulting clubs, that kind of thing. And I never aimed to end up in consulting. All my internships were in, pure tech and data science roles. What I really appreciate in consulting is the access. You get regular exposure to senior leaders, right? Whether that's internally or your clients. Like I'm on calls with CFOs and CTOs in the room and regularly exchanging communication with them. And what I found that, really different than pure tech jobs is you tend to get very siloed, right? In my internships, you had a team, maybe you interacted with your sister teams or your larger org, but you were really in this bubble of kind of 30 to 40 people max, and you never really got access like above your product manager per se. You never are really understanding why senior leaders are, making product changes and what the kind of downstream effects of those are. So that's something I've really enjoyed at consulting. Just the level of access you get for, someone like me who's very early in my career is amazing because you get to see how those leaders think, what they prioritize, how they frame problems, what questions they ask. When I initially joined consulting, I was still thinking in a very technology-minded brain. So the questions I'd ask and how I'd interact with them was, they would look at me like I'm dumb, right? But then you slowly start to understand how those senior leaders are kind of wired to think, and you also start learning and thinking like them, which I think is super useful for anyone.
Yeah, in terms of what I love most about my current job, it's probably two things. One is the scale of things that of sort of the environment that I'm going to operate in. Uh, so I got to work with a variety of orgs. Most recently, I have been working to sort of customize LLMs to sort of fix merge conflicts, accelerate software updates for Windows. because its OS repo is sort of like one of the largest Git repos on the planet, basically. And so the scale of things that I'm getting to see is kind of unlike what most of the industry might sort of see. Small problems, even small problems become really big problems at a scale like this, with like a project which is multiple decades old and has yeah, easily like hundreds of millions or billions, whatever lines of code and things like that. So when you're sort of getting like number of merge conflicts per day or per week in the 3 digits or the 4 digits or whatever that is, the scale is pretty huge in terms of the amount of code and sort of like features and things that you're sort of planning to move. And so, yeah, sort of getting to see that scale and let's say the number of devices and such that this is impacting and how you're trying to improve the quality of software updates and such, which are, let's say, pushed out to like probably billions of devices every month or periodically. That is really interesting to sort of see how like an entire organization sort of works towards that. Another part that I personally really like in my particular job is ownership, because that sort of really makes me very accountable for sort of the work that I'm doing. Instead of having like, let's say, one part of the work assigned to someone else, another part to someone else, which oftentimes is very common in large companies, right? You feel like you're a cog in a machine. In my personal case, let's say in this particular project, let's say I'm handling all of the model customization recipe around fine tuning and evals. I'm handling the backend in terms of like the backend service, which is going to invoke this model. I'm in charge of the UX in terms of where this product is deployed. So I'm basically in charge of engineering the entire product. And on top of that, part of me also feels like masquerading like a product manager in terms of actually talking to customers one-on-one and sort of getting their feedback on what are the existing friction points that they're facing, where like such a huge amount of their like day-to-day work just involves, let's say, fixing some of these conflicts. And how can you sort of like deploy AI in a product surface in a way where it really sort of reduces that friction and saves a lot of time for developers, and sort of improves the quality bar for the features that like more than 10,000 Windows engineers get to ship every month. And so sort of the ownership that I got from an engineering perspective, from even like a customer-centric perspective of getting feedback and sort of being fully accountable for the health and success of that entire product of like an AI-driven product, which is trying to like change some process altogether for thousands of engineers, has been very personally rewarding for me. Because not only have I felt like I've gotten skills, like both soft skills and hard skills in a variety of aspects, I've also personally felt very accountable about what I'm trying to do and kind of felt more like responsible for it.
And in my role, what I like most about it is I get to work on finding answers to questions that I think are like really worth answering. So kind of how my job works is a community would come to my organization, like the city of San Diego, and say, last year we had 12,000 people experiencing homelessness in our community. It's been going up by 15%. Like, what do we do? How do we fix that? And I'm on a team with a bunch of like really smart people who know a lot about this, and I get to do like the numbers behind it and present to these people what I think that they should do mathematically to like solve this issue. So that's like one part of my role that I really like doing. And then we also do research. And so and I'll put this in the chat, we just completed a research study about encampment resolution. So homeless encampment, you can probably picture what that is, like a bunch of people who are living unsheltered like all together. And so this is becoming like a very pressing and urgent issue across the country, but especially in California. And so we, took this on as like, how do you fix that in a way that's humane and really ends the problem, doesn't just like move people around. And so I got to go like to LA, interview people who are living in encampments to like collect qualitative data, hear from them, and then analyze that and put it into a report. And then also like working at a nonprofit, it's kind of like roles are like less defined in my experience, which I think is like good and bad. But I very often like step outside of like a data analyst, data scientist, and so I've been doing like some web development with them. And so the second link that I just put in there is basically like we put together this 140-page report about encampment resolution, which is cool, but it's like I know most people aren't going to read that. It's too long. And so what I did is kind of condensed it into this like much more accessible web format. And my company, my organization was like all about it. They're like, oh yeah, that's really cool. Like, let's keep doing this, you know? So there's a lot of room for me to kind of like show off different skills or passions that I have. So yeah, those are a couple of things that I love about my role.
And it shows the diversity of the work that data science graduates can do. All three of you do such different work and all very meaningful, and sounds like you really enjoy it. So that's great. So we've talked about some challenges you faced in searching for work, and we've talked about what you love in your current job. Now let's talk about a hurdle you've had to overcome as a newer professional.
Lots of hurdles, Kelly. Which what do I talk about? I think the biggest hurdle for me, and this kind of changed through internships and only got bigger as I joined full-time companies, is, how do I say this slightly? Common sense doesn't always prevail in the industry. I'd see a problem and I'd think, oh, I can do this. Yeah, sure, I can solve this in 1 hour, 2 hours. Like, why hasn't anyone solved this before? But getting a problem and getting a solution across the finish line, for a variety of reasons, isn't necessarily always to do about the technical stuff, right? There could be budget constraints, there could be IT and governance issues, there could be scope creep, and one of my least favorite things in the whole world is office politics and kind of org dynamics. I hate that so much. But for example, we're doing this project right now for one of our clients, and there's some pretty heavy AI integrations going on, and we hit a roadblock because the company's IT policy didn't allow us to use some AI tools we were looking to use. And the fix was simple, would have taken a day max, but just getting all the stakeholders involved on a consensus, right? We had myself and my team, then we had, our bosses, our, other project partners, and then the clients, all of those people. The client has IT, the client has a finance team, the client has a technology team. And there's 10 different groups that all eventually want to reach the same goal, right? But their priorities are different. They have different incentives, right? Different teams might have different tolerance for risk. So, one team might be, take an audit team, for example. Audit teams never want to take any risk because they're managing the financials of a company. And if they mess up, the company's going to get sued. Other teams like sales might have humongous tolerance for risk, right? Because salespeople are ultimately driven by driving new sales. So they do want to take more risk. So yeah, overall, just that, yeah, common sense doesn't always prevail because there's a lot of different politics and incentives at play. And sometimes you got to do your best just to make sure that you're not getting caught up in that mess and just doing what you like.
Yeah, in terms of, let's say, hurdles or challenges that I sort of overcame as a newer professional, initially when I sort of joined as a new grad, and before the era of coding agents and large language models, yeah, a lot of it was kind of about, okay, how do you develop that muscle to triage an issue or to fix an issue? Or to sort of develop like a certain kind of an engineering mindset where you're able to kind of like find solutions to problems very quickly, or kind of like think very programmatically in that sense, and just sort of like pure sort of engineering coding skill and things like that. But as my scope sort of increased, let's say over a couple of years, one of the biggest challenges that I got to face was it was actually more towards the soft skills because it almost feels like hard skills are starting to be commoditized now. It's just starting to become like an everyday thing, especially with the modern tools and AI that we have available. One of the biggest challenges that I basically got to sort of uncover as a newer professional was, okay, like how do you build alignment? Kind of similar to what Atharva was saying in terms of how do you convince, let's say, multiple stakeholders towards a particular solution and let common sense prevail in things. But how do you sort of build alignment and charisma to convince someone or to convince different stakeholders when multiple teams own different things? How do you make them care about something? And that sort of is especially important because when you're trying to like achieve a certain goal, you likely cannot do everything by yourself, because there are dependencies on other teams. Different parts of a technological stack might be owned by different sort of teams. So it's sort of this combination of not only how do you sort of convince them, but how do you sort of infuse more energy into the room in terms of making them care about the objective that you're trying to bring in. As in a way, like an outsider, how do you sort of align, let's say, their goals and their priorities towards this, not only the shared objectives, but also towards shared impact that you want to create and kind of attribute to each of the teams that you want to be contributing to a specific initiative. And so sure, you might get that in a simulated environment and internships and such. But I have personally seen even in my job or even with people who've spent like a longer amount of time in their careers, it's very easy to just feel like you've lost your energy or sort of that interest in the project. And it's very easy to sort of be like, okay, yeah, that's another requirement. We'll sort of work on it and things like that. But real excitement, I feel like is kind of like kind of like comes in when even let's say just like one person feels more excited or passionate about driving a certain result, because I feel this kind of optimism is very infectious in terms of trying to like change that sort of team dynamic. And how do you like understand people, not just at the level of what they do, but also at the level of like why do they think in the direction how they think. So even interacting with them outside of your meetings in terms of having lunches with them and things like that have been some like really fulfilling ways for me personally to try to sort of like overcome that psychological gap of conflicting priorities or whatever between I and that team, and kind of really trying to understand like their priorities and trying to sort of invoke that sense of like energy and excitement, and sort of interest towards shared objectives and shared impact.
I think the hurdle that I've faced and continue to face, I think AI has huge implications and potential to help in my field, to help address homelessness and offer new ideas and find efficiencies to help solve a problem that has really only gotten worse during our life. But there's major, and I've become the self-appointed head of AI integration at my organization. A title that came with no pay or really any respect, but I basically try to push AI tools and help people get used to AI because then this is my hurdle: is I get a lot of pushback on AI because to some extent, and a lot of it is valid. Data centers are displacing people and to some extent contribute to the homelessness crisis. And so some people are like, why should we be using these AI tools if they're like negatively impacting the environment, and the environment is having these major implications on folks that we're trying to help? That doesn't make a lot of sense, which is a good point. And so they have a valid argument. And I work with a lot of lawyers. A lot of people in my organization are lawyers, so they're very they're great at arguing, like having really solid points. But for me, I'm kind of just trying to tell them, like, my perspective, it's like we're in 1908 or whatever, and the Model T was just invented, and you're trying to like convince me to stay on the horse and buggy, even though it does pollute and everything. So that's kind of my hurdle that I wouldn't say I've quite cleared. This is like an ongoing thing where there's a lot of like push and pull with the AI at my organization because some people are really into it and a lot of people are really not into it. So that's kind of what I'm going through. And I think in most organizations that people from, people in this room will work at, you'll have better buy-in. But it's something to keep in mind that, buy-in is not universal across the board.
Thank you all for your perspectives on that. And in speaking to AI, I think a lot of current students will be interested in what you have to say in regard to this next question, and that is, how do you see your job, your company, or the industry as a whole adjusting to the rapid advances in technology and AI? And what do you think current students can do to remain competitive?
as you said, the industry is moving super fast. These days you can't rely on your education, your schoolwork, or if you're interning at a place or working somewhere, you can't rely on your workplace to give you the most latest and up-to-date information on the newest technologies, right? Claude can be dropping new stuff every other day. So it's up to you to kind of try and experiment, see where the new tools are lying, just find something in your life that you want to automate that you don't like to do, and see if you can automate it using AI. Just a experiment, and who knows, that might lead you to some other cool tools. It might spark some new ideas in you. For example, I play a lot of pickleball, and me and my friends have a lot of arguments on whether or not the ball was in the line or not. So we were like, wait, why can't we just make some physical hardware device that you can just put on the net and it'll track line calls? So yeah, just find something you're interested in and try to just stay up to date with the technology updates.
I'll emphasize on the second part of your question, Kelly. I believe what current students can sort of do to stay competitive. There's a couple of rules of thumb that I'd like to follow. One, keep 5 copies of your resume in your backpack at all times. If you happen to just see like a career fair or like an info event sort of thing happening near you, and you suddenly want to go there, or you meet someone who feels important, give them a printout of your resume. Get those colored printouts from Geisel Library. The paper quality for colored printouts is a lot better than the black and white printouts. But yeah, aside from that very specific point, I'd also really would like to emphasize, and I've said this in multiple universities wherever I've spoken, including HDSI in the first Alumni Spotlight, really focus on personal branding to set yourself apart from the rest of the crowd in terms of updating your resume, LinkedIn, posting, just trying to develop that muscle of posting about the stuff that you do. And you can use modern AI tools to, let's say, even draft some of those LinkedIn posts for you if you're feeling like a lack of inspiration to sort of do that from scratch. And plus one to Atharva's point, try to create these patterns and associations in your mind with the latest tooling that comes in. Try to maybe use resources like TLDR AI newsletter to learn about things, try new things out, and try to invoke that curiosity in terms of trying something new and seeing where that curiosity takes you. For example, I really like using Perplexity's Comet browser to automate a whole bunch of web browser oriented actions for me, where it can take control of my browser and do a bunch of compound actions. And that sort of invoked that curiosity in me personally to try to play with that tool a little bit more and seeing how I can sort of best utilize it. So a combination of trying things out, invoking that curiosity, streamlining or improving your job search process based on the modern tools like Simplify or others. And yeah, 5 copies of your resume in your backpack and personal branding are my top points.
For me, when it comes to AI and finding a job, really, I don't put this to the chat too. Don't outsource your critical thinking or your creativity to AI. Okay, those are the things that you do best. And I can really tell when we're in an interview with somebody, and there's somebody who's just used to using AI for everything. They just constantly are asking it questions that really they could think about or talk to somebody. And that really is that's very harmful for you. It's quick in the short term, but it's not good for you in the long term. So that would be kind of my main advice. It's only use it when it's really automating or saving you a bunch of time. Really keep your critical thinking and your creativity. Don't outsource that to the ones and zeros.
Great advice. I totally agree with that. But want to open it up to Q&A now. I know we've got a lot of students on here, but we've got one question in here from Bhagya. How do you guys recommend maintaining relationships after initial coffee chats without it feeling transactional?
I think, Bhagya, excellent question. For me, when I was a student, right, it definitely felt transactional if I messaged them multiple times because I felt like I had nothing to offer to them. Good thing is that will change once you graduate and you get a job because you're not the only one, looking for jobs, and you'll be able to help each other. I've had multiple times where, the people I reached out to a while ago for jobs or coffee chat or, just learning about their role, reach out to me then later for help and, various things, right? So it does go both ways, and you shouldn't feel bad necessarily, but just pinging people hey, just wanted to catch up. how are you doing? We can get on a quick call, or meeting someone in person for coffee is always great, because that opens the door for countless more types of conversation than just a phone call or a Zoom does. So yeah, don't feel bad about it is my point.
Yeah, I really love Atharva's response. I'll just add like one tactical thing. I really like the automatic messages on LinkedIn in terms of congratulating people on a new role or wishing them a happy birthday with like one click or two clicks tops. So that has like really kind of helped me not only sort of like keep in touch with people, but like it sort of triggers that conversation in terms of, hey, how are you doing? And then that way you still get to like chat about quite a few things and you don't feel like strangers in that sense.
The auto reply. I have one coffee chat that is like keeping me up to date. I'm like living and dying. I don't know this guy at all. We just like did one 10-minute coffee chat. He like tells me every interview he has, how'd it go? Okay, he didn't get the job, but he's feeling good. He's on to the next. I don't know if I would fully recommend that, but I do sometimes hearing about the wins and the losses can be helpful. Just like keeping the person in the loop, I guess.
Great, thank you. How long did it take to find your first job, and how many more or less applications, interviews would you say you did?
Hundreds. I lost track. Hundreds. I have a Google Sheet somewhere that I used to use to keep track, but yeah, I can't really put a number on it.
693. I'm trying to recall from
He
my
has the exact number. There you go.
Yeah,
Of course
about
he does.
yeah, six. In fact, I even had this in the alumni spotlight sort of slide. I think like 693 roles, close to 50 interviewing processes, uh, 3 offers, 9 months. Yeah.
Yeah, my stats are in the chat, but well, like 400 applications, 5 interviews, 1 offer. So it's a grind for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I just want to add a little note to all of that, because I talk to a lot of students who mass apply to things, that it really is important to tailor your resume. Don't be blasting out general resumes. Like, you've got to be able to stand out from the crowd. And so that might be a little hard to do when you're applying for this many jobs, but you need to be very intentional about it. What strategies did you take to network, find groups with like-minded people, and make new connections in the data science industry?
You don't need to be making that many cold connections. Once you make a cold reach out on LinkedIn, that person should then be hopefully able to get you other warm connections, right? And it's kind of like a tree onwards that should hopefully spiral into many and many more connections. So once you have at least a few people that like moderately trust you and know who you are, then it should be pretty simple. Just be like, hey, I'm looking for this kind of stuff. Who would you recommend in your circles that I can talk to, or who else would you recommend me talk to, like that?
For online networking, I'd recommend the LinkedIn Alumni tool. If you go to the UCSD page, you can grab all the alumni from there, and then you can kind of look up your company. You can do like some Boolean search queries and things for people working in a certain company with a certain role, things like that, and you can sort of connect with them because you all went to the same college together. For real life sort of networking, events on campus, because there's just way too many events that has been happening that happen, and connect with everyone that you meet on LinkedIn. You can even just have like a LinkedIn QR code that you can show them for them to like scan it quickly. And whoever you meet, also try to see if you can grab their emails. Otherwise, sometimes their emails are also mentioned on their LinkedIn, and make sure to also email them and sort of thank them for their time. Even if they don't see their LinkedIn messages very often, they will basically 100% see their emails. So
Excellent advice. I love that. I'm going to finish with one last question. I know there's more questions in the chat, but since we're running out of time, this is something that I get a lot of questions from students about. Do certifications significantly help in getting data science roles, or should I focus more on projects and experience?
only when my resume had absolutely nothing on it, aside from, I guess, like a 4-point GPA in my first quarter, that I have to do sort of certifications and things to just sort of prove that, hey, I know how to code and I know some basic data science skills to get my first opportunity. After I got my first opportunity, none of those certifications mattered. They basically got purged out of my resume. My entire experience on my resume was just my practical experience, and that's really what mattered.
Yep, +1. I can't really add anything else.
Good to know. That's really helpful information. Um, well, Will had to hop off, but he left his LinkedIn information in the chat, and it's also listed in 1220 in the event information, as is Atharva's and Advitya's. I would like to give a virtual round of applause to our presenters today, and just again, thank you for your time and all of your thoughtful information, insights, experience, advice. It's been really helpful. So thank you for that. And we'll look forward to reconnecting somewhere down the line. Thank you to everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you for
Thanks, Kelly.
organizing this, Kelly. This was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Absolutely.
See you guys.
Have a good
Bye.
night.